Now I know what some of you are thinking out there. Gee, Leon, this is all fine, well and good, but I've never played Oh Susanna in my entire life, nor would I want to. The reason I stopped taking music lessons at the music store was that dude wanted me to play Oh Susanna, and I wasn't going to do it. I know that everyone here wants to be good all-round guitar players, and so we are going to come back and continue beating on the major scale a little bit more. But for right now, let's turn our attention to something that's maybe a little more applicable to rock and roll kind of music. Having a little fun, I suppose, is not going to kill us at this point, so let's go. We talked about how the problem note when you're playing over the G chord in the key of G is if you're harmonizing that D note with the F sharp, you get the major 7th sound, and how some players just kind of make it their default to always play that D-G pair instead. What some players also suggest doing is just treating, when you're playing over the G chord, just don't ever play that F sharp at all. And play a harmonized scale that is the major scale without that F sharp note in there at all. That would be called a hexatonic, a 6-note scale. The major scale has 7 notes in it, the 8th note, the octave of course. And so if you were to do that and play a harmonized scale, this is what you would get. Starting out, the first 4 pairs are just exactly the same as we looked at with the harmonized major scale. We're going to skip our D, F sharp and play D, G. And then the next pair of notes up from there are going to be another perfect 4th, E and A. And then we're up to our octave because we don't ever want to play that F sharp there that we were playing F sharp and A on our harmonized scale. The F sharp note is dead to us for this purpose, and then we're back up here to our octave G and B pairs. And that's a pretty good sound. Obviously, you're not going to be able to play major scale melodies if the melody has an F sharp in it, but this is very good for playing fills and just kind of improvising loosely. It's pretty much a clam-free scale, harmonized scale to play over the G chord. And the way you can use this is to use the parallel scale, so the same fingerings over both the C chord, the 4 chord, and over the 5 chord. So you're kind of abandoning the G major scale. You'll be playing some notes that are not in the G major scale. You'll be using an F sharp note when you get to the D chord because that is the 3rd of the D chord, and it's not going to matter there. It's not the major 7th of the D chord. It's the 3rd of the chord, and so it's not going to matter. And so you get that's a very good sound, and it's very useful. What we're going to do is look at this in some other fingerings as well, so that you can play it in some other positions, so you're not just locked into duplicating that same fingering by moving up and down the neck. And so we're going to do that as we look at the major scale in some other positions. Now, what if we were to play the major pentatonic scale played harmonically? What would that look like? Well, for those of you that don't know, don't play it. The major pentatonic scale in G is the notes G, A, B, D, E, then up to our A, G rather. If you were to play it in pairs, what you'd get would be you'd start off with the G-B pair, just like our other scales that we looked at. The next pair of notes up, though, would be A and D, a perfect 4th. The next pair up would be D, B, and E, a perfect 4th. D, G, our perfect fourth, E, A, a perfect fourth, and then we're back up to our G, B octave. So it would be that's E, A down there. Sounds kind of like the Allman Brothers or something. And it may not be that wonderful a scale by itself. You may find some places you like it, but it demonstrates how playing a series of perfect fourths in a row doesn't necessarily sound bad. It's taboo kind of in classical music to play a series of perfect fourths like that, but in our pop context or country context or rock and roll context, there's nothing wrong with that at all. That also means that a lot of times you can get away, if it's convenient or desirable to do so, you can get away with using some fourths. Sometimes when playing a third might be awkward. An example would be on a G chord, instead of going you can get away with playing. And so there may be times when it's convenient for fingering purposes to not have to move your hand out of position to get a third. You may be able to get by depending on what note it is. That E and A there is not a chord, aren't chord tones, they're just passing notes, and so you may find that you can use a fourth in some places where you might technically be supposed to be playing a third. Now here's the major hexatonic scale, the harmonized hexatonic scale, that lower octave, just like we looked at the lower octave of the harmonized major scale. Here's that hexatonic scale. It would be like this. G-B pair, A-C, B-D, C-E, then we got our fourth here, D-G, and the other fourth, E-A, and up to our octave.